Welcome to Dan's Talks. My guest today is Connor Flanagan, who's the director of the Bridgehampton Museum. I understand you joined the place a year ago in March. Is that correct?
Well, I actually started at the end of 2023. So that would have been about September 2023, but we had a quiet beginning as we were just getting things together, but we officially reopened the museum March of 2024.
And tell again what buildings we have.
So the main building that the museum has always been known for is the Corwith House, which is located at 2368 Montauk Highway in Bridgehampton, New York, right across from the Candy Kitchen. That houses the Corwith House itself, which is a historic farmhouse, but as well as the original old Bridgehampton Jail, the Strong Wheelwright Shop, and a few other accessory buildings. And then where I am today and where the museum is currently operating out of is the Nathaniel Rogers House, which is 2539 Montauk Highway, just at the other end of Main Street, directly next to Almond and across the street from the Topping Rose House.
So it's right by that Bridgehampton War Memorial.
Correct.
This building has been the longest reconstruction of a historic building in my memory ever. I think the original plan to take it over was around 20 years ago, and construction started, or was supposed to have started a couple of years later after they got approvals. But really what got approved, it seems, was the big signage from the construction company saying that they were going to do the job, and then they never did. And I think that happened several more times. And finally, the building got completed last year, 20 years later. The whole town has changed.
Yeah. The project, I believe, started around 2003 when the town first engaged with purchasing the property using the community preservation funds. And so the museum, the museum and the town worked together on that project. And over the course of really my whole education, going from grade school through high school, through college, through beginning my internships and professional career, this project had been underway, and I'd been seeing it my whole life, growing up out on the East End. And it's now interesting to sort of be able to take it over right as it's basically finished.
Well, tell me briefly about your growing up out here and your parents and your studies that got you able to be hired for this job.
Yeah, so I was born in Southampton Hospital. I grew up in Riverhead, and I went to Mercy High School, the Catholic school that used to be in Riverhead. And growing up here, my family always had a place in Quogue, and always had friends that bridged the gap of really the entire island, all the way from Montauk out to Rocky Point. So my parents were kind of driving me around all the time, seeing different friends and stuff growing up. Spent a lot of summers at the Quogue Beach Club with my family, and yeah, my schooling began, like I said, at Mercy High School, and then I eventually started my college career at SUNY Farmingdale, and I eventually wanted to move away from home, and so I found a little school outside of Chicago called Aurora University, and so I decided to go there. It was exactly 1,000 miles, driveway to driveway, from my parents' house, so that felt right. And so I started there, and originally the plan was to be a high school history teacher. And then throughout the course of going through college, filling my credit hours as needed, I took a museum studies class because it was adjacent to history, and I figured, why not? And in taking that class, I really discovered that I really loved museums, and I liked teaching. And that just seemed like the correct choice to make at the time, because I guess I didn't realize fully that museums were an option, which I feel like is a lot of the time when you're in college, and I'm talking to college students now, they have like one vague idea, but they don't know a lot of the possibilities that are out there.
So here you are. And what is the plans for this summer that people could come see where you are at the Rose House?
The Nathaniel Rogers House.
Nathaniel Rogers House. And also at the other museum. Do they have a separate director?
No. So it's all the one and the same. I'm the director of both. The Corwith House itself The courthouse itself just needs a little bit of touching up. So like how the Rogers House had many years of construction and projects going on, the courthouse itself is now in need of a little bit of attention. So we have plans for some small exhibitions there and some exterior programming, but the house itself needs a bit of work. And with all the effort that was put into the Rogers House, we're spending a lot of our time now here to make use of it. But the plans that we have for this summer, we have a bunch of programs. So one of the key things that I really like to try and do is create hands-on active programs for people to engage with. I'm a fan of history lectures as much as the next director of history museums, but sometimes the crowd isn't always the most interested in historical lectures. So while we still have a few of those planned, we are trying to mix in a handful of other activities to try and get everybody more engaged and involved.
So what would they be? The ones that would engage the visitors?
So some of the hands-on programs we have, being that the Nathaniel Rogers House, while it looks like a whaling captain's home, he was actually an artist. We're getting a lot of hands-on artistic programming. So right now, into May, we're running a watercolor class taught by a local woman, Dr. Quincy Eggington. We also have a plein air painting workshop that we're starting. Well, we began it last year. Now we're expanding it. So we're going to do 10 sessions starting in May, going all the way through September, going to different historic sites throughout the East End. Some of the sites involved are going to be kicking off with the Bridge Golf Club, going to Meadow, Sofo, the Carl Fisher House out in East Hampton, the Duck Creek out in Springs, as well as some of our historic properties here, as well as Bridge Gardens and the Courthouse and Nathaniel Rogers House.
Are you taking in somebody to live in the house for the summer?
Unfortunately not. That would be kind of nice if we could, but I don't know if that's exactly allowed given CPF rules.
What was the holdup about? Was it all about money, or were things done wrong, or what happened?
So I don't know the full extent of it, but what I understand is that there was some issues with construction with some of the different companies that were hired originally, and then some decisions were made to change how things were going. And then the building was actually really finished, I believe, in 2020, but given COVID and then transition of the director who had been in charge for the 20 years prior retiring, there was a bit of a delay in the official real opening of the museum. So many people have maybe seen some other work being done here now, just tightening up some loose ends. But by this summer, we're going to be pretty much all shipshape and ready to go.
What programs will you be having in the summer?
So on top of the ones I just mentioned, we also are going to be having a figure drawing class taught by local artist and teacher Bruce Lieberman. And then we have a series of other great historical tours and workshops. So one of the really fun ones is the BB Windmill. Many people have seen it their whole lives, but not many people have been inside of it. So we're going to have 3 tours of that this summer, one in May, one in July, and one in September, that are led by Southampton town historian Julie Green. We have also some other really fun workshops that people really enjoy going on over at the Corwith House, called Beer and Blacksmithing. So that is a blacksmithing class where our resident blacksmith, Ricky Patinas, will work with guests to take a piece of steel, a little rectangle, and turn it into a bottle opener. So it's a way to learn this ancient craft that is still really important for people to engage with and has a direct history out here, while making something functional that they can use every time they have a barbecue or a pool party or something like that. And then they can in turn kind of advertise for us every time they talk about it with their friends and family.
Well, that's going to be a lot of fun. I was thinking of an event that took place for a number of years on the grounds of the other building, about old farm machinery. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I'm very familiar. They used to run the old tractor runs and such over there, the engine run, I believe they used to call it. So unfortunately, the folks that really were the driving force behind that have since really passed away or moved away in different ways. And we still have a lot of the materials, and our hope is that we could eventually bring that back in some form or fashion in the future.
They had a show on the grounds. There were no tractors. And it was, I can't quite remember the farmer who ran it, but these were implements that were small enough to be carried. They were iron. They had gasoline tanks and little 2 horsepower engines, and he'd fire them up and a wheel would turn and it would go bang, bang, bang like that. It was to core something or grind something. And they had about 10 of them, and I know where they are. And the kids loved it. The kids would come to watch this thing because it made a racket. And you could see sparks fly and smoke come off. And I know that sounds dangerous, but it was very minor. And I hope you would restart that. And I traced where it's gone. And those farm tools that I've just described are in a barn in Watermill at I think it's Halsey's, where they have milk cows. You probably know where I'm talking about.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
That would be so neat to do.
Yeah, part of the hard job with these small nonprofits like ourselves is really just bandwidth and trying to do all of these things as quickly as we can. And so the main goal is trying to find other people from the community that would like to restart or create new ideas that can come to us. So I'm always very open to people contacting us with different ideas and what we could try and get accomplished. That's really how we've created a lot of these programs that we have currently, is by having concerned people come to us with fantastic ideas.
Um, are you familiar with the history of the place before it was restored? Not long,
I,
I'm talking about recent years, like in the 50s to the 90s.
Yeah, so the Dan Rattiner house, I believe the Hopping family. I lived here for a number of years, and since coming in, I've spoken to a few different people that knew them, spent some time in the house, different things like that, learning little bits and bobs about what went on.
Inclusive people. And the building was falling apart. The columns out front were being held up by 2x8s. They leased it out the front lawn to a gas station for 25 years. Do you know what was going on in there, why they were this way or not?
I can't really speak to that. I wouldn't know what exactly might have been causing the situation as it was. But what I can say is that I'm glad that the town was able to get things together with the History Museum at the time to figure out a way to save the structure. Because if the town didn't step in like they did with the community preservation funds, there really probably wouldn't have been a way to save the building, and it eventually may have needed to be torn down, which would have been upset.
Um, Eventually, they tore out the gas station, obviously.
Yeah.
Um, Another interesting thing I found near on the property where you are about 5 years ago, and I'm worried it's not there anymore, is some uh, lumber from the Wicks Tavern, which was right across the street. That was a Revolutionary War tavern. As you probably know, there's a big historic marker out front of it. It's now a medical building, but it was originally built in colonial times. And what happened and why I saw lumber on the fence, right by the fence separating where you are and the archive building, they were lying open on the ground, was that in the Depression era, late, like 1939, 1940, men didn't have any jobs. And so the government gave them a job to document the Wicks Museum architecturally. So they measured it up and they made a set of plans because it was going to be torn down. So there are plans for the Wicks Tavern. Now, obviously, I'm not going to tell you you should rebuild the Wicks Tavern. However, I wondered if if you found anything similar to that, because that's where that came from. The lumber is 300 years old, and it was covered with. When I saw it, it was covered with a black tarp. Still there or gone?
So from what I understand, the material is all still there for the most part. Maybe pieces have disappeared since when you last saw it, but there is still quite a large pile of material. It's not part of our collection, not anything we have the ability to use or anything like that. I don't know if it's technically property of the Parks Department of the Southampton town or a different department per se, but it's the town's property that we don't have jurisdiction over exactly.
Well, it's just a thought because you might be able to use that if it's part of Wick's Tavern, at least as a display, maybe
Yeah.
some photographs or something.
I
Just
have asked I have asked numerous times what to do about it because regardless of if it is important or not important, it currently looks like a pile of garbage. So if it's left to sit longer, it'll become garbage. And if there is a reason or need to save it, then we need to really act on that. But as of this point, I can't really do anything with it.
yes, well, I'm telling you what I was told that was,
Hmm.
so that you're the director. So if you want to do anything to, just said, I said at the time, well, you ought to cover it better. I don't think there's anything under it. You know, it should be somehow at least preserved. But anyway, that's that story. So what happened to your teaching career?
So what happened with my teaching career was simply it's kind of an easy story where I became decent friends with the professor who was the museum studies teacher who I had in college. He was probably 26 and I was probably 22. So we just became friends outside of school, and he was able to get me a job at the museum that he worked at. And after spending a semester working there, I just quickly realized, oh, never mind. I don't want to do teaching anymore. Um,
Where do you live now? Do you have a family yet? Are you living with your parents? Do you have your own place? Just wondered.
Yeah, so once I figured out the museums was what I wanted to do, when I moved back home, at the time living with my parents in Flanders, um, I had emailed pretty much every museum on the east end of Long Island looking for an internship or something like that, and the only one that answered me was the Southampton History Museum, um, which is where I had worked for the last several years, really since 2015, after I interned there. Um, and throughout that time, I moved out of my parents' house, was popping around to the different rental places one can find in their early 20s on the East End, mostly in the Hampton Bays area. But as of taking this job, my fiance and I recently just purchased a place in Patchogue. So a little farther away, a little longer commute, but it's okay because now we don't have to rent.
Well, yeah, that's great. I think, is there anything else you'd like to discuss about it? Oh, tell us a little bit about the people who built that place, the place you're in now.
The people who built it, the like originally, or
Originally,
yeah. So as far as I'm aware, the history of this building in particular starts in the early 1800s. We don't have a precise date exactly, but by about 1820, there was a structure here. And the room I'm in now, my office that I'm currently occupying, would have been one of the upstairs bedrooms in the house. And directly behind me, that sort of built-in shelf would have been one of the original windows of the home. In 1840, when Nathaniel Rogers lived here, he expanded the footprint of the home quite heavily, giving it its characteristical Greek Revival look that it has today. And in doing so, expanded the whole front section of the house, adding all the rooms downstairs and upstairs and the big columns out front, which is really the look of the house that it continued to have for many, many years.
was one warrior or fishing a whaler.
He was in fact an artist. So his claim to fame was he was one of the best miniature portraitists, really, and probably in the country and definitely in the state of New York. As a kid, he worked. He had goals of working in the shipping industry, and was severely injured when I believe he was 16 years old. And so then he spent the rest of his life as an artist. He lived in New York City for a while, and once he made a decent amount of money, he was able to move home, buy this property, and really look like he was a big successful whaling captain like everybody else. But he made his money as an artist. But with that being said, I would also like to talk about our upcoming new exhibits. So we have a lot of different really fun exhibits that are planned for this year. But the next one that we have coming up is on May 10th. And in line with Nathaniel Rogers being an artist here, what we're trying to do is, like I said, with our programs, have a lot more hands-on activities that are art-based, but also to grow our permanent collection. And we've been really lucky to have 28 different artists donate pieces of original work to our collection. Because after several weeks and months of conversating with them, they've all come to really grow and support our mission of being custodians of local history and culture out here on the East End, and specifically in the Bridgehampton area. And so we're really looking forward to building upon that initiative and growing our permanent collection to showcase different art from artists that both have grown up out here, live out here, and show around in different galleries and other museums. So we'll be opening that exhibit on May 10th. And in line with that, also opening our new gift shop, which will include a series of books given to us from Skira, which is a fantastic art book company based in Italy, as well as a bunch of different branded merch from the Bridgehampton Museum that I think people from the community will really enjoy.
There's a very famous movie actually taken, which I think is the key possession from, at least from my experience of the museum, which is the Bridgehampton races that used to go in the early 1950s all through the roads of Bridgehampton. And in one of those, they were traveling around 80 or 90 miles an hour, usually driving European sports cars for the most part. And there's part of that video is when somebody came roaring across the bridge at Bridge Lane and left the ground, and you could see 2-3 feet off the ground as it started to fly and then came back down on the other end of the hump of the Bridgehampton Bridge. It's a remarkable thing. Are you aware? You must be aware you have that.
Yeah, so that's actually part of one of our permanent exhibits. So the exhibit I just mentioned, I'll be opening on the 10th. That's taking up the lion's share of the museum, but not everything. One of the permanent rooms that we have is the Raceway exhibit. So in there, we have a documentary that was put together by the Bridgehampton Racing Heritage Group in partnership with Bob Rubin at the Bridge. And the documentary, it's probably about 15 minutes or so long. Narrated by Richard Kind, and tells the whole story, and it's really fantastic. So I encourage everybody to come check it out. And in that room, we have different photos and other ephemera from the racing history, including a not exactly perfect to scale model, but a pretty good scale model racetrack that people can come in and race the slot cars we have, or if you have your own slot cars that fit, you could always bring your own and take them for a spin on the track.
That would be great. I look forward to it. What are the hours the museum is open?
So this year, we've expanded our hours. We're going to be open Wednesdays to Saturday from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. And we're also currently looking for docents and tour guides. So if there's anybody in the community that's interested in volunteering and coming out to the museum to spend some time talking with people from the community and showing them around the museum, I would love to talk to you.
Thank you for being on the podcast. Enjoyed this.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is great.